Greetings, vloggers, followers, and potters. Dustin here from Dustin's Dynasty, here at you again with another edition of the weekly vlog. If you haven't been following me for a while, I've been living this autism journey for over 4 decades now. I believe in some realm, even being diagnosed at 13. But I've been living on my own for the past seven or so. I've had a part-time job for over 15, and I've done many other things growing and maturing, being the person that I am today. And I've been doing almost over 375 of these podcasts. I write daily blogs, and I share a daily post every day through the Meta platform that's either on Facebook or Instagram. And that kind of what leads us today when we talk about, when I want to share with you for the next few moments about keeping it going. And, life is not easy with autism. It's not easy to bear. And sometimes for a long time, I wanted to put that to the side. I didn't want to believe that being autistic came with its struggles or made things harder for me than what it did with the rest of the world. I was often believed to not let my struggles or my challenges or being autistic or having mental health diagnoses hold me back from doing what I needed to do. Granted, in the same token, it never meant about, you know, not denying the fact that I am indeed disabled. And later in life, I also admitted that and getting the help that I need to thrive and succeed in the world that is today. And we think about so much about what the world is today because, today I got to take a trip. Um, to our local community center, and I volunteered there for work experience over 20 years ago. I think, even though the building has many of the same elements, it had the same two vending machines that was there 20 years ago. Some of the things are there, and some of the things have been updated, and the building itself is over 100 years old. It's served this community quite well. Kind of a history buff, so I can tell you that it was first built as our high school, then for many years served as our junior high, and it's been a community center for over 50 years now and continues to serve our community well. It has an auditorium, a pool, a gymnasium, so it's had many purposes in life. But as I walk through the halls of that place and know the layout very well because of my time there, and I think, so much has changed in the world. And, I continue to mature and grow every day, even thinking of where we are now in this journey, even where we were 2 years ago. And, if you've been following me for at least the past 2 years, I've been doing these vlogs for about 5 years or so. But 2 years ago, there was a big change that happened. And, it changed the way I got to where I needed to go every day. And that held me down so much. And I don't think I really saw, I was always a creature of habit, but I didn't really see how much the change would be so helpful for me. And I was this old stick in the mud who thought nothing could matter, this wasn't going to work and this was going to be the worst thing for me and I would result I was just rambling and overthinking and just rambling and overthinking, how life was going to be if I couldn't handle this. And if this situation that has since proven to be very well did not work out to be what it was, that I would resort to dumpster diving, to a life of eating food out of dumpsters. And in fact, my mother saw a gentleman eating out of a dumpster in our community this week, and it made me think about that and how low that was for me, and how when I spew things off sometimes, and I know many of us on the spectrum do those things. Sometimes we don't think about what we say, or we just get so anxious in nature that we don't think about what we say. We want people to get a reaction, or we want them to support us in a way that we feel like we are heard and we are understood, and that the way that we know, or the way that we had felt comfortable for so long, had always been the way of living and the way of life and the way that it should be. And ironically, that changed for me. That was one of the first of many changes that happened in the past 2 years. And it kind of opened the door to having so many things change for me. And that was one of the things that made me see that it was worth to keep going, even though when there was so much in my brain that told me not to do it, not to do what I had to do, not to do the things that were driving my anxiety, that were holding me back from being willing to adapt and change the things. So, that was just one of the things that started, and it actually did work quite well, to the point when a couple months after that fact, not even a couple months, maybe even 6 weeks, that, things were going to be added to that to make things easier. And, I fell in love with what was happening so much that I achieved that ahead of the target date, and was able to navigate and self-advocate on my own and do so well when it came to that. But then, life changed again a couple months after that. My father had a serious injury, and it has made him bedbound, and he can't walk, and that has changed my life significantly too. And as much as it put me down, and it was also no easy walk, literally and figuratively, in many ways, for me to adapt to the way things were. On top of that, I had my supervisor at Rick retire after a very long time, that I had been used to things being that way, and then having to go through the changes of how things were, where I worked and how I did things. And, there was just so much that was compacted into that. And, there could have been many, many times that I could have just said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. No, I want something different in my life. No, I don't want to do these things. And all amongst all those things in the past 2 years, I didn't make the soundest decisions for myself in order to take care of my mental health in the way that it needed to be done. And, I paid the price for that. So did others. And, as much as I never really seen how much I was not only hurting myself, I was hurting others too. And, it bounces back around to seeing why things are just so important in life, and why we have to keep pushing on. Why do we have to keep going when there's so much in the world that can just hold us back and keep us from doing what we think we don't want to do, or what anxiety brings us to do, or what our thoughts tell us to do, or what we may ruminate on, or think that is what it is because we were led to believe these things, or be open to these things. And sometimes you just have to say, sometimes it comes to you in divine intervention, in faith, in ways that you may not even imagine, maybe even in a comical way, to say, you just don't need to do that anymore. You don't need to think that way. You don't need to believe that way. You need to let all those hard feelings that you had about the past, and understand that the way that I felt in the past was not healthy for me. There were many issues that were not healthy for me, but to keep harboring on and thinking that those things were really, and they were a very, very big part of my life. They were holding me down so much that it basically kept me bogged down and not able to do things that I like to do. And while I did do some of the things that that are routine in nature and that had to be done, it made them more difficult. And eventually I had learned and it had to learn that, I had to let those feelings that I had or what was believed to be let it go because it was not helping me. It was not useful. It was holding me back from being the person that I wanted to be. And sometimes, we don't realize either when we're not taking care of ourselves or we're not doing the right thing, that it can be harder for us to do the things that we need to do in life. And sometimes just even making that effort and doing what is needed, pushing ourselves through as hard as it can be sometimes. We just have to do it. We have to keep going. We have to not give up at doing what makes us feel good, what makes us going, what keeps us going. We always have to find something to keep us going. And, along a lot of the time throughout my life, I was very miserable. And, people could see that in me. How I acted, how I approached things, how my demeanor was. I think in some ways it could be masked in a way that, because of certain environments where I was expected to have certain ways of conducting myself that I could just do that. But in other ways, there was reality where I took this energy on these people or these connections that I had because I was unwilling to see that the good in it or that there was parts of it that people could help me with and not see all the bad and hold on to things that really didn't need to be held on to or that, I had to do the work myself to improve myself and stop acting like, such a horrible person and be down and out all the time and complain about each and everything. And granted, it still isn't easy and it's still subsidal in nature, but it is in no way in the shape or the form that it was in because for a long time, I made life miserable, and especially those who loved me and were family and cared for me. All I could think about was pointing out every single thing that was wrong in my eyes. I could see nothing good about anything. I could point out anything. And sometimes that was fueled by others wanting to be in the misery, and sometimes I was just miserable with myself because I was harboring these feelings and these thoughts and these processes that just didn't belong anymore. And they were hard for me to digest and they were hard for me to let go. But once I learned that it wasn't healthy to hold on to these feelings, thoughts, and things that were driving me up a wall, literally and figuratively, and keeping me back, I seen that there was so much more potential to live for, both on the inside and the outside of me, that there was life beyond that, and that I could see that there was life and potential and willingness to keep going. And it can be sometimes hard, yes, but we push through it. We do it. We make it through as hard as it can be sometimes. You have to keep going. And I think, that's one thing about my family and what they have always taught me. Even, as many struggles as I personally have been through, as my family has been through, we don't give up. That's just something our family doesn't do. There may have been times when I have passively said things to call attention that I want to give up on things, or that, I think that life is just miserable and not worth living. But then, sometimes, it turns around and, it's knowing that our family is one of those people that just don't give up. They didn't give up on me when I was in my worst moments, when I was in psych hospital after psych hospital, even when I signed myself out at the age of 15, and I didn't know what that was the right idea. My parents spent money, and I mean in the tune of thousands of dollars to have the proof and the evidence to not let me do that again. And it's something I still live with to this day, but it was to protect me then. And even if something would ever to happen, it could protect me now. But it's also knowing that they did what they did because that is what the true meaning of family is. You don't give up on people. You just don't. And even as it was hard for me this year to see that, as my father was transitioning from the veterans facility back home where my mother would be his full-time caregiver, it was hard to start that untethering process. It was hard to see, that I had to find my own way of living and find my own way of connecting with the world because, I have to realize that my parents are senior citizens. They're not going to be around forever. And part of that is learning and growing, even as hard as it can be. Now, granted, I have other family members and they do great things for me, and I do appreciate them very much for doing those things. But some of that, it's a different paradigm. And, I have to learn and grow, how to live, how to be, how to exist in this world. And just, learning that we don't give up. We just don't do that. And sometimes, it's seeing the moments that make me keep going, that make all the difference. Like doing the meta post every day and seeing the reactions and seeing the comments come in. And, I'm never one to boast my social media pages, but you know, people come and go, and that's okay. And I have, I think, over 1,300 followers on Facebook and around 1,000 on Instagram. And every day somebody's giving a reaction or commenting, and how it brings joy in people across the world. Not just people who are directly connected to Facebook. It may be other individuals on the spectrum or families who are battling the issues. And it's the way that I put things out there, and it's the way I show myself and be the person that I can be and do the things I can do, not only just in Dustin's Dynasty, not only just in the social media realm, but it's also using those gifts and those talents in other ways, to do what I do to make things be great for people and to keep the community informed and to do so much more, that I am seen as the valuable person that I am, and the people that like me and the people that know me. And even if it's just seeing somebody on the bus and they remember me from high school, or seeing a teacher at the Walmart, or seeing somebody in the community, it's always that there's that smile or something of my face that always brings it. And you know what? That's what keeps me going, even when the going gets tough. As hard as it can be to do things, we know there are things that are important. We know there are things that need to be done. There are things that just matter, and we have to keep going. We can't give up. We don't ever give up. That's just something we don't do. And, it's just part of living. And, I'm proud of myself for doing the things that I do and getting through these struggles and being in a really good spot right now and really doing really good. So I just want to thank you for that. And I want to thank everybody who's been following me and joining this channel. And if you haven't already, be sure to like, follow, share, subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and X. Those handles are Dustin's Dynasty. I'm on the web. That address is www.dustinsdynastyusa.com. And lastly, I have a link tree with all my podcasts, all my socials, all my websites. You can sign up for my email, everything you need to know about me. That handle is Dustin's Dynasty under the link tree. Again, I want to thank you for listening. Let's have a good rest of the weekend. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe out there. Do the best you can. Remember, you are loved. You matter. You are enough. and don't ever give up. We don't ever give up. So stay safe out there, take care of yourselves, and we'll have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon.